thanks so much for coming and braving what was an interesting afternoon of weather. April, my husband has some sort of catchy phrase about lambs and lions, but I think today was a lion. Um, but thank you all for being here. Very exciting tonight to have Lisa Bate, a supervisory wildlife biologist with Glacier National Park. She specializes in birds and bats and oversees multiple research, inventory, and monitoring programs, including harlequin ducks, songbirds, raptor nesting and migration, black swifts, Clark's nutcrackers, and bats. Who has seen the harlequins kayaking down McDonald Creek? They are so cool. Uh, we like to bike the Going to the Sun Road and are peeling off every chance we get to look for harlequins. And people will stop and be like, wait, is it a bear? No, it's a harlequin. It's so much cooler. Yeah, it takes the type, I guess, to really appreciate the amazing bird species we have here. But Lisa also oversees the wildlife compliance monitoring for projects like the reconstruction of the Going to the Sun Road and many glacier roads, focused on preventing detrimental effects to grizzly bears. I'm sure she would love questions on the construction. Prior to her employment with Glacier National Park, Lisa worked as a private researcher, a wildlife biologist focusing mainly on birds, cavity nesting species, and their habitat. And tonight, Lisa will discuss Glacier National Park's raptor and golden eagle observations, a nest monitoring program that aims to better understand these avian predators, including the role that lookouts can play in aiding park staff in the observations and searching for nests. Again, thank you so much for being here. Help me welcome Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me okay? I think I'll just hold this. Can you hear me better now? Okay. No, you can't? Talk louder? Is that good now? Okay. Yeah, thank you everyone for showing up and learning about the golden eagles and other raptors in Glacier National Park. This is one of my favorite projects. People always ask me, what's your favorite project? And I'm like, I love them all. But this one's very unique and it's been slow to build, and just love where it's taken us and where it's going. So taking flight, and a disclaimer right away, I have awesome pictures, but I also know awesome photographers. And so that's where most of these pictures come from, friends and volunteers and colleagues. It's funny what Kira just said about, oh, what are you looking at? Harlequin ducks, or no, a bear? Most people, when they come to the park, that's what they're looking for, grizzly bears. And we're often out there with scopes or binocs, and they're like, you see a bear? We're like, no, it's a harlequin duck, or it's a golden eagle nest. And people don't think to look up into the skies. But the golden eagle is similar to the grizzly bear in terrestrial landscapes. The only difference is the golden eagle is in the skies. And if you take time to look up, you may see one of these awesome creatures. They both play the same role, iconic and powerful predators. So in Glacier, we take a two-prong approach to golden eagle monitoring. In the fall, we do migration counts, or we run a hawkwatch site called the Mount Brown Hawkwatch Site, or Lake McDonald Hawkwatch Site, and we do nest inventory and monitoring. Golden eagles are raptors, and a lot of people ask me, well, what's a raptor? We have other raptors like the osprey, the peregrine falcon, red-tailed hawk, and we have nocturnal raptors like the great horned owl. A raptor is a bird of prey, and there are three main characteristics that most raptors have. Number one, sharp talons for grabbing prey. An exception to this is the turkey vulture. It's considered a raptor, but it does not grab prey. It just like lands and eats it. Excellent eyesight. I love this fact about raptors and eagles. They have eyesight. It's like you looking through a Power 7 binocs. And they can see a mouse in the end zone at the 100 yards away in a soccer field. And wouldn't you love to have vision like that? I would. I love binocs for that reason. And then the third characteristic is they have to have that hooked bill for tearing prey. So why monitor raptors? They're the top of the food chain, and anytime we can monitor species that are in the top of the food chain, it can really be a good indicator of what's happening, on the lower levels. They're sensitive to pesticides, habitat loss or change, and climate variability. So they're a barometer of ecological health. And, big thing is they control rodent and small mammal numbers. We live on a farm and we love having the raptors. We have some posts where we encourage the raptors, the great horned owls at night, and the red-tailed hawks during the day, and the kestrels to land so they help eat the voles in our pasture. And migration counts are inexpensive and efficient, much cheaper than putting transmitters on birds and other mammals or other animals. So all raptors are protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and eagles are afforded additional protection under the Bald and Golden Eagle Act. Even so, there are some troubling signs for some of our raptors. Golden eagles, lead poisoning, a lot of people don't realize, but that is one of the main challenges for eagles. And I'll go into that a little more. Rodenticides. A lot of people like to use rodenticides instead of snap traps to kill mice and gophers in their lawns. But if your dog or cat eats a mouse that has ingested that rodenticide, it used to be that you could rush it to the vet and they could give it vitamin K and an antidote and save that dog. But now the companies have changed the ingredients and there is no antidote. So please consider snap traps, because we have had some pretty increasing numbers of raptor die-offs that we suspect rodenticides were the cause. And then climate variability. I'm all about alternative energies, but it turns out that a lot of our raptors like to be in the same places that wind farms are because there are high winds that will help them on their migration south. Cheatgrass, it's an invasive grass. Most of us know it because we get those little sharp things in our socks that we all hate, or in the dog's ears. But it's an invasive grass that's taken over out west, and it has very low nutritive value compared to our native grasses. Because of that, a lot of the mammals, like jackrabbits and cottontails, their numbers have decreased, and those are some of the main prey for golden eagles. Leg hold traps deployed in the wrong way have caught a number of golden eagles here in Montana. And then shooting and poaching. I used to be really naive about this until I think it was 2 years ago. If you heard what happened down in Nine Pipes. And two different poaching incidents here in Montana lately, where poachers were baiting eagles with carcasses and then shooting them to sell their talons and feathers on the black market. And the ones down in Nine Pipes had killed like 3,000 birds, and many of which were eagles. So last I heard, one of them is spending 4 years in jail and the other one's on the run. So even though eagles are apex predators, they're like a grizzly bear. They're also scavengers. They're going to eat what they can find. Lead poisoning is huge. In the fall, if hunters use lead ammunition, there's a picture there of what happens to that lead bullet when it hits a deer. It will just fragment. And those are like all kinds of lead pellets in there. We encourage people to consider using non-lead ammunition. Also, ground squirrels, if people are shooting those with lead ammunition, eagles will feed on those. What happens is that is accumulated in the eagle's body. It affects them neurologically. They get weak to the point they can't feed themselves anymore, and they eventually die of starvation. In the park, even though hunting's not allowed, I have now submitted 3 different eagle carcasses, 2 balds and 1 golden eagle, and they came back as the cause of death was acute lead poisoning. So it doesn't know boundaries. When I first came to the park in 2009, I had learned about the Jewel Basin Hawkwatch site. It started in 2008, excuse me, and got really hooked on it. And then I came to the park and met Jamie Belt, and we started talking about what we knew about golden eagles. Jamie Belt's our citizen science coordinator, and we've been hearing from Bridger Hawkwatch site outside of Bozeman that golden eagle numbers were going down. And we both were like, oh, I wonder if there's something we could do to maybe collect some additional data to aid in golden eagle conservation. This is Jamie Belt in the background, and Amy Seaman, she in the foreground. She used to be Montana Audubon's conservation biologist. A lot of the pictures in here are hers. But we started talking about maybe we should try to get a hawkwatch site going in Glacier National Park. And one of the things that we knew about was that in the mid-1990s, biologists realized, standing down there by Lake McDonald Lodge, looking up at Mount Brown, one of the biologists realized, oh, there's an eagle migrating. Oh, there's another eagle. And there was like this parade of eagles. So they started counting. And for 3 years in a row, they documented nearly 2,000 golden eagles migrating past Mount Brown each year. And so we had that for baseline data, and we're like, hey, let's try to repeat that and see what's happening with golden eagles migrating through Glacier. Here's a view from down there in Jammer Joe's parking lot of Mount Brown Lookout from that Lake McDonald area. Pretty far away, right? You need scopes. The other thing we realized, who's climbed Mount Brown Trail? Yeah, is it flat? No, it's steep. It's actually like the steepest trail in the park. So we knew that we were really interested, after having some experience with Jewel Basin, trying to find a site up higher that we could get closer observations of the raptors migrating by. It really aids in identification. You can tell what species, you can tell what age, and you can tell what sex. And so we started this program. Nope, wrong way. In 2012, we started investigating other sites that we thought maybe we could get closer to the raptors and not do it at Mount Brown. When I say Mount Brown Hawkwatch site, it's actually not right at the lookout. It's 5 switchbacks down below. As you're hiking up there, it's the first time you can look down into the Snyder Creek drainage. And you know, when we started this, that was all green forest, and the trees were getting taller and taller, and it was hard to see the raptors, the eagles coming around. So we did Mount Brown. We tried Swift Current Pass. That actually was an awesome place because we learned that the eagles, as they're migrating through Glacier, right there, something happens that triggers them. They either continue along the Continental Divide, or they turn and come down the upper McDonald Creek drainage and then past Mount Brown, or they're coming across Stanton. We climbed up Stanton and counted raptors from there, and then Scalp Block. And the whole time we had 2 awesome volunteers, Pat McClellan and Becky Williams, that they were back at Lake McDonald Lodge. They had counted there for years, helping with those counts. And that was our control. So we would do it from noon to 4 p.m. and we would collect our data up on a mountain, and then we'd come back and we'd compare data. And guess what? Mount Brown won. We had the numbers were the most comparative. And then, you know, I remember when I was up there one time, I was like, gosh, I wish some of these trees weren't here. And then in 2017, the Sprague Creek fire happened. Guess what? It really opened it up. So it's awesome now for observing raptors up there. The other thing that we were interested in, because it is so strenuous to get up to Mount Brown, and we thought about Scalp Block. We asked for permission to use Scalp Block if we were monitoring raptors up there to overnight there, because that can be like a 2.5 hour hike also. And they said no, because they still use it as a fire lookout. And then we asked about Mount Brown. You know what? It hadn't been used in 3 decades. And we're like, really? And so we got permission, and it was really serendipitous. One day I was talking to Sierra Mandelco, our cultural resource specialist. I'm like, what do you know about the Mount Brown lookout? And do you think we could ever use it for our Hawkwatch site? And she's like, that's funny that you asked that. I think it might have been Chuck that you had just, or somebody had just come in and say, hey, we'd like to work on lookouts in the park. And she had some money to put forward to that. And then the Glacier National Park Volunteer Associates stepped up and donated some money. and we started to refurbish the Mount Brown Lookout. It hadn't been used in 3 decades. And the first time I went up, there were some volunteers. We had to take a lot of PPE because we had to wear masks, gloves. It was just mouse infested, poop, 5 huge bags of trash. And that's how it began, if you could see it now. So when you're up there at our Hawkwatch site, most birds are flying high overhead. But when conditions are right, this is what happens. They come in close and you're like, oh my gosh. I mean, you cannot believe how close the golden eagles on a good day come to you. This is an immature golden eagle, Jake Bermonti. He's one of our volunteers up there and one of the photographers I mentioned. Oh, let me go back. You can tell this is an immature. See that crisp white line on the tail? We age the golden eagles. This would be an immature. That means it was born this year. So we keep track of that. The adults attain their adult plumage at 5 years of age. So it's either an adult, an immature, or a subadult. This is an adult golden eagle. And what is so fascinating being up there is how light changes colors all the time. You can sometimes a golden eagle flying straight at you, this will look like saffron gold on its leading edge of the wing and the head, and other times it can look white, and it's just amazing the variation. And this is a subadult golden eagle. See how there isn't that crisp white line, and that's how we age eagles, the golden eagles. But we also want to monitor all the raptors up there. So one of the first things we have trainings that we put on, and I'll have dates at the end of this talk if you're interested in getting involved. We teach, the basic forms. Eagles, those big, long wings, the feathered fingers at the end, the buteo, they're really good at soaring. The accipiters, those are woodland hawks. And that long tail acts like a boat rudder. It just allows them to go in and out of the trees really fast with those short, broad wings. And then there's the falcons that are just screaming fast. If you've got something flying over your head really fast, you pretty much know it's a falcon. They are just so fast. So here's some of the hawks that we see up there. In the upper left is the red-tailed hawk. See how on that leading edge, I don't have that pointer, but on the leading edge, we call it the dash and the comma in the wing. And those are the two main characteristics that we look for in red-tailed hawks. The adults have a red tail, guess what? Juveniles don't, so it can throw you. To the right is a rough-legged hawk. That is an Arctic nester. We get those late in the season, usually like late September, we might see one, but mainly in October. Bottom left is a Swainson's hawk. We don't have that many coming through. The main thing you look for when you see those is the little white patch under the chin. And then the rough-legged hawk, we have those in the winter here, but the main thing to look for are those dark wrist patches and that big white at the base of the tail. And then the bottom right is a ferruginous hawk. We don't get many of those, but when we get a really white hawk, and then you look for those feet, they form that V with the colored feet, and that's how you can tell you have a ferruginous. We bought a camera to aid in identification, and these are some of the pictures that Jamie Belt took. And that one in the upper left, the first time I looked at it, and one of our techs had selected what she considered were good pictures, and I couldn't even see the bird. I had to really blow it up. It was so cryptic, but that's a rough-legged hawk soaring in front of the cliff faces up there in Mount Brown. Again, at the bottom, on the bottom left, another rough-legged hawk, and then the two of the right are red-tailed hawks, and that's some of the close-up views you can get up there. Broadwing hawks do not breed in Glacier National Park, but they do breed in Canada, and it's a super treat to get these guys migrating by. They're a small, compact hawk, and this is an adult with the bands in the tail, and so it's always a treat to get those when we see those up there. And then here are some of our accipiters, the sharp-shin hawk, that's the smallest one, and then the Cooper's hawk. These are the ones that you can talk and talk and talk and discuss. I think it was a sharp-shin. No, it was a Cooper's, blah, 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 blah. Even the experts, they just move fast, and it's sort of like a gestalt almost sometimes, but there are some key characteristics, and we teach all of our folks what to look for. And then there are the falcons. Here's the peregrine, an adult, and pretty much that helmet, that black helmet is what you're looking for. The prairie falcon, look at the dark in the armpits. I mean, as soon as you know you have a large falcon, the first thing you're looking for, does it have a mask or like that helmet or dark armpits? That can tell you immediately what species you have. Then the merlin, this is our second smallest falcon, eating on the wing. Um, and then the male kestrel, our smallest falcon. So here's a pie graph of what we saw in 2004. And we counted 2,741 raptors migrating by up at our Mount Brown Hawkwatch site. Of those, 1,700 were golden eagles, about 65%. And you can see, all the other species. Here's a table that shows you what we've seen. Turkey vultures, we've had one. We're not turkey vulture habitat up in the mountains. In contrast, if you guys have ever heard of the MPG Ranch down in the Bitterroot, south of Missoula, they have a hawkwatch site, and turkey vulture is their number one raptor. They have like thousands of them migrating past their site every year. And that's what's cool, is each site has different species that really are migrating through. We have some osprey, bald eagles. Bald eagles, it makes sense, we get some, but they mainly migrate along waterways. And then sharp-shinned hawk is our second most abundant raptor. And then if you see golden eagle in the bold, those are the numbers that we have counted thus far when we started in 2018. And we started in 2018, started late though, because we had the other Howe Ridge fire and we couldn't access the site for a while. So we didn't have as many survey days that year, but we've done better each year, and we've been training enough people. More and more people are becoming very skilled at being primary observers. It's really fast paced most of the time. You might get a few seconds, like, I think that was a blah, blah, blah. But the one thing I'll warn you about, you start doing it, it's very addicting. If I had done this when I was 19 years old, I think it would have totally changed like the path that I was on in my life at that time. The exciting thing is we have a gyrfalcon on that list, and that was the first time this past year or last year. Jamie Belt was up there with some of our techs. They just put the camera away. It was 6 p.m. at night, and that's our largest falcon. They also nest in the Arctic. They're sort of like the snowy owl. They only come down this far south when they need to because of food. But we had our highest number of species last year, which was 17 different species. So this is just golden eagles, and year by year, and you can see that most of the migration happens in the first 2.5 weeks of October. And that presents its own challenges because usually, what's happening in October with the weather? Yeah. And if you're a hunter, you know how to hike and then sit and stay warm. It really was something new for me. I'm not a hunter, but I love hunting raptors in this way. But when I first started working at Joe Basin in 2008, the first year that they started, it took me a long time to figure out the clothing thing. You hike up, you sweat like crazy, and pretty much you figure it out after a few years. You get there and you totally strip down, put on all dry clothes, and it's not uncommon at all to wear 7 layers of clothing while you're trying to count raptors on the side of a mountain. But it's still really fun. And this is from 2004. The light blue line shows all the raptors, and then the orange line is golden eagles. And then the black line is just raptors and no goldens. And you can see that in September, that's when we get a lot of our peak for other species like sharp-shinned hawk, red-tailed hawk, things like that. And then October comes around and other raptors, they sort of taper off, except for like the rough-legged hawk, things like that. But then the golden eagles just peak and really start moving. So how do raptors migrate? They need wind. They can't just, they want to conserve energy. You don't want to migrate on a day that you have to flap your wings because you're going to burn a lot of calories. It's just like if you're, trying to swim, you don't want to swim against the current. You want to try to swim with the current. But birds do not like, it's just like a plane. You want to take off into the wind to get lift. And those arrows show that the wind down below is constant air pressure, but the wind going above, because the wing is curved, it has to move faster, which makes it a lower pressure system. And that allows lift, and that allows the bird to be lifted high as it's heading into a headwind. Birds need southwest winds to migrate because that's where they're going. It's just like if you're at an airport, the wind socks. The planes want to take off into the wind. That's what gives them the lift. And the plane's wings are also curved on top to get that lift. Days that we have winds coming out of the north, you might get a handful of birds migrating, if any. I mean, there have been many days I've been on a hawk watch site with 0. But weather forecasts aren't always accurate too. I've had bus days where it looked like, oh, conditions are perfect, we're gonna get lots of birds. And I've had days like, oh, it looks awful, we'll just have to hang out and talk, but not much is gonna happen. And then all of a sudden we get 200 birds in a day. So there are 3 ways that the birds can migrate. Wing flapping, which they try to avoid at all cost. Headwinds, and they don't want it really strong, and they hate variability. You might have good winds, 7-10 miles an hour, really ideal for these birds. But if they're going like south, north, west, then you just don't see a lot of migration. They like those steady winds, both in direction and speed. And then some days you don't have a lot of wind, but what you have is the air warming up. And so that creates thermals. And when that happens, we get what we call kettles. We don't get enormous kettles here like they do in some hawk watch sites. I mean, literally, I've heard of some kettles having like 2,000 hawks in them. But I was lucky enough to be up at Mount Brown the biggest day. We had one day where we had 484 raptors in one day, and we had like 15 golden eagles kettling up at once. Really hard to keep track of because all of a sudden they're like, oh, I think the wind's better over here, and then they go there and you're like, oh, did we count them? So it's really important that we have like at least 3 people up there on a good day to stay accurate and count the birds. So there are 4 hawkwatch sites along the Continental Divide that we really we can look at their data and see like real-time data with this app called TrekTelin, and I'll show you that website as we go on. But up in Canada and Alberta, Mount Lorette, that is like the primo golden eagle migration spot. They get the most along the Continental Divide. Then you come down, and then there's Mount Brown in the Triangle, and then the Jewel Basin, and then Bridger down by Bozeman. Bridger used to get really good numbers, but their numbers have been declining quite a bit. And there's some days that we're up at Mount Brown, and it's like, oh, we're not getting any birds. I wonder what Jewel's getting, and I'll just like open the app and look real quick. But Jewel Basin's not a big golden eagle migration site. They get far more raptors than we do, but they mainly get accipiters, sharpshins and Cooper's hawk, but they also have, a little bit of everything. It's an awesome site, and it's a much easier hike than Mount Brown if you ever want to check it out. So here are some numbers from the Jewel Basin, Bridger, Mount Brown, and Mount Lorette. Mount Lorette is at the top in the yellow. And you can see that their numbers are consistently really high. What's interesting, in 2022, we had like ideal conditions at Mount Brown. And look how our eagle numbers just went up high, almost equivalent to what Mount Lorette is. And then in 2023, boy, it was a tough year. We just never had good winds. They either were like 0 to 3 miles an hour, or they'd be southeast and then going north. They just were pitiful. And you can see that in our eagle numbers. We just had really low counts. But it looked like the eagles somehow detect that and at some point decide, hey, I'm going to go over to Mount Lorette, that area, to migrate because the winds are better. And then there's a question when you're up there, what direction do the birds come from? This is Leah Breidinger. She's a biologist with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And I think this was her first time I got her up there. And she's like, well, where do they come from? And I'm like, yes. And that literally is the answer, because we're looking 360 degrees around us, because in the morning when it's cool, the eagles often come up that valley that you're looking behind Leah. And then as the air warms up, next thing you know, they're coming around the mountain over by Lake McDonald. And then when it gets really warm, they're screaming over the ridge. So it's like a lesson in physics every day. And I love that part of this. It's like you just watch as the air warms up and the winds change, the birds, they somehow detect that and they change their flight patterns. So here are just some fun pictures from the site. That's Jamie in the upper right with her kids. She gets her kids to go up there. Jake Vermonti's in the bottom left, and then some of our volunteers in the upper left and bottom right. And people just at the Hawkwatch site. We invested in one good chair with one really good chair that allows us to sit on a slope looking up at the ridge. And that is like the best place to look with birds coming over the ridge. So we always got someone looking up there. And my techs were teasing me on the upper right that I was like just lounging around, not doing any work. And there I was looking for birds. And you never know what the temperature is going to be. So when you go up there, you're going to take all kinds of clothes. Yeah, it's snow, but because the sun was out, it was nice and warm. Then there are days that you're just like, I just can't keep warm. And what we do is we'll take turns just pacing back and forth if there's not a lot of bird action happening. We love hand warmers. We love toe warmers, things like that. And then there are some days that it's just miserable. This was a day that the day before we had really good counts, and Lee and I were up at the Hawkwatch, and we had heard about, it's the first time we ever heard the term atmospheric river. I hear it a lot now, but we're like, what the heck is a atmospheric river? Well, as we hiked down, there was 3 inches of water on the trail, and it was like a river on the trail. And it's like, oh, okay, that's what that is. And then there are days that conditions are perfect. This was the first year. I'm hiking up there with 4 brand new green volunteers, and we get up there and there are 5 golden eagles in the sky kettling. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I hand the tablet to Terry Devokie in the front there, and we count it and we count it. We had people stationed in 3 locations, and I'd give everybody, like, you take those 5 eagles and you have to watch them. You can't count them until you know they head south over Snyder Ridge. And we went and went and went. And this was at 3 p.m. None of us had eaten lunch. And they're informing the number 400 there because we had already counted 400 raptors in one day. We ended up with 484. And like 85% of them were Goldens. It was unbelievable. I mean, it like brought tears to my eyes. I just had no idea that could happen. Some more pictures. And then in the bottom right, you can see the lookout. I think that's one of the coolest things about this project. And I think that's why I got invited to give this talk, because it was a win-win for us to use Mount Brown Lookout. That lookout was in pretty poor shape when we started using it. Took a lot of cleaning, a lot of refurbishing. And I know that Chuck Manning and his crew, the Lookout Association, they've been instrumental in every year doing something to improve the conditions. And that's what it looks like now. You can take the shutters off and have these incredible views. We've got new mattresses up there. We've got wonderful teacups, so when it's really cold, you just hold them, you get all warmed up. And it's like a 5-star hotel now. But I love it because it's a cultural resource win and a natural resource win. Instead of hiking back down and up every day, after we count, we can do 5 more switchbacks up and spend just an incredible night in Mount Brown Lookout. This was the first night when we started the program, and 2 of my main volunteers that helped me clean that lookout out in the beginning. So they were very instrumental, Ann Zabadil and Karen Chicory, and it was just such a treat to share this with them once we got it cleaned up. BJ Worth is in that upper left. He's one of the main photographers in my talk tonight. And then you can see Holly Holmes laying on the mattress there. Holly's actually my graduate student who's defending her thesis on Friday. She's my Harlequin duck person. And so, but it's just a beautiful place. And to hike up there, like in the bottom right, the golden light that comes. And then last year, I never did see the Northern Lights. Everyone else saw them but me. But oh, I guess they just were put on a show like so many times. But I was up there in the upper right when the lenticular clouds were happening, and just I had never seen that before with that large of cloud formation. There's no water up there, so we have to use a pack train or pack mules to get our water and our supplies up there. So we're always grateful to the barn and the SOC for help us get our supplies up there. And then this is pictures heading into October, and you can see that as you go on in the season, there's a point where we can't get up there anymore. And that's when we switch and start counting down at the Lake McDonald Lodge. It can get really cold up there. But we do have a little heater in there, so it could be, 19 degrees when you wake up. And we got a little propane heater that we can get it up to like 42, which is totally bearable. So our common visitors up there, we do have an intense hazing program with these guys to make sure they're not getting too comfortable around us. More just candy for the eye candy. That's what BJ calls these pretty pictures. And then there are sometimes you don't take the shutters off. Guess why? But I mean, that's what it can be like up there. But it's so lovely to have shelter after being out in the cold all day. And then you have days like this. Yeah, I know. One of my techs, he was up there and everybody was heading down but him. He was going up by himself. And he got caught in a storm. He got to the lookout just in time when that storm let loose. And then this happened. I was like, seriously? I asked him if he photoshopped it and he said no. But okay, so this is Trek Tellen. And we were lucky enough to find Gerard Troost from the Netherlands, who created this mainly for himself, and now it's used worldwide, and not just for raptor counts, but all kinds, shorebird counts, all kinds of stuff. And this is what you can tune into, and then you just, in the search image, you would put Mount Brown or Mount Lorette or Jewel Basin, and you can have real-time feedback of what people are seeing up there. And now we're going to switch to eagle nest monitoring. So when I first got to the park, I kept hearing about how many eagle nests. I mean, I was hearing that there had used to be 60 eagle nests. And I'm like, really? Because I just wasn't seeing a lot of eagle activity. Eagles can have multiple nests within a territory. We know that. But we weren't sure why we weren't seeing much golden eagle nests. So we started this intensive effort to go back to all the historic nests we could find. And what we learned that some just no longer existed, but we didn't really know why. And the concern about lead poisoning came back up. Like, are they just not nesting, or are they nesting and failing? So since 2009, when I took over the eagle monitoring, there have been an average of about 6 active eagle nests. And we're just wondering, is it a real low number, or just are eagles moving their nests to different locations? So that's a big part of our program. Our main objectives, the first thing is the territory occupied. That just simply means, is there an adult in the area come April? Did the pair lay and incubate eggs? This is the hardest part, because when the eagles are on the nest incubating, they literally lay low and they don't move. They don't want to move. They want to keep those eggs protected from the weather and predators. And sometimes you can be there 2 hours and not see anything. And then 5 minutes later, you see a little head. It's like, oh my gosh, I just saw something move. So we do it in teams of 2 because your eyes get so fatigued. We'll have one person looking through the scope. So the other person is just open-eyed looking around. And that you do that because often it's a female that's doing the incubation most of the time, and the male will do prey deliveries. And that's how we can tell if the nest is active. And then we want to know how many chicks hatched, or did they hatch? A lot of times they fail early on. And if chicks fledge, and if so, how many? We see lots of eagle nests that start with 2 chicks and maybe only fledge 1 or none. So this is what it's like looking for a golden eagle nest. Can you see the nest? I can't either. That's why the red circle is there. But this is how challenging it can be. And we have to use scopes. but we'll often just go and watch a cliff face and see if we see eagles landing. You ever see an eagle with prey or a stick? Please follow it and let me know where it lands, because that probably indicates that there's a nest in the area. Here's a close-up view, and literally it's like a pile of gray sticks. The color of a nest is really important. If a nest hasn't been used in a long time, they often just look gray. If it was used last year, often we'll see tinges of red, because we've learned, especially with BJ's work, that the female loves to bring fresh green boughs to the nest all the time. There are some nests that I've looked at, like there's one right there on Mount Cannon by the Avalanche picnic area, and you can look up, and one year it looked like a massive Christmas wreath, just so green, and like it looked like it was piled 3 feet high. And you can, this one has red needles, so it had been used the previous year. Usually the red will stay around for 1 year. To help people, to help volunteers, we've made these nest location sheets, and we can give this to someone. It tells them how to get there, where to go, where to set up the scope, and then we have these different pictures saying this is what it looks like far away in the distance, and then as you zoom in. And if you look at the 2 pictures on the bottom right, what you're going to see is some whitewash. That is a really good indication of a nest in an area, because when they're pooping, they just do like this propulsive, what's the word? Jet propulsed poop, and it goes all over the wall. And then we think that's what makes those orange lichen grow, because of all the nutrients in the excrement. So those are things that we look for when we're looking for golden eagle nests. Yeah, I talk about poop a lot. That's part of being a biologist. So now we're going to focus on the rising wolf nest. BJ Worth, I had met him in 2008 up at Jewel Basin Hawkwatch site. We froze together up there many a day. But as we started talking, if anyone here knows BJ, you might know where this is going. But we were like shivering up there and looking for raptors. And then slowly I started asking him personal questions. It turns out BJ's on his second career with filming and birding. He loves birds. But before that, he actually was a stuntman for James Bond movies. And so he still has this, he still needs thrills though. And so now his thrills are filming golden eagles and raptors up at Jewel Basin. And when he asked if he could get involved in the nest monitoring project, he said, do you have any interest of me filming a golden eagle nest? I was like, are you kidding me? I would love that. And we have learned so much because of his work. But we had some other volunteers go and confirm that this rising wolf nest was active. And then we could assume a hatch date by backdating. And then began the time with BJ filming it. Another one of my volunteers in the audience here, Dan Savage, was really instrumental in helping get this going and help carry a lot of heavy photography equipment up to a ledge to photograph this nest. That's BJ standing down there on the ledge. You see? It's just an incredible picture. And this is the rising wolf nest. And now what I have are some amazing videos. BJ couldn't be here tonight. He's out of town. But these are the videos that he has taken of the rising wolf nest, and just sort of looking at it chronologically of this chick developing in the nest. There is a lot of wind noise because it's the east side and there's a lot of wind. But one thing I want you to look at the legs of this eagle. It's so young that it can't even stand up on its legs. It's just sort of crouched down. But this is when he learned and shared with me that like every single day, the female would bring fresh green boughs to the nest. I think the chick was hoping for food, but did you hear the difference in the begging? And that's another thing that I train our volunteers in. I'm like, listen, use your ears, not just your eyes. If you hear a chick begging, especially once they're ready to fledge, they almost beg incessantly, like if they need food. And it's a good way to find a nest. Just the same one. Wait a minute. Okay. Now here's the female feeding the chick. Notice anything about the chick's legs at this date? Yeah, and it's standing up now. It's strong enough to stand up on those legs. Let's see. Oh, this one's just very cute. Before they fledge, they have to strengthen those wings, and there is a lot of wing flapping going on. That also is an indicator to us how close they are to getting ready to fledge. The one scary thing is being up on a cliff. It's not unusual, or it's not common, but it can happen that eagles, both bald and golden eagle chicks, can fall out of the nest. That makes them very susceptible to predation, or they can die on the way down. If the adults are in the area, they will continue to feed as long as there's, aren't predators or humans interfering with it. Here's the chicks starting to flap in the nest. And what's amazing is watching that transition from the white down to black feathers. That they need that full set of feathers before they can fledge.
Cool, you lift it off again, right? take that step, buddy. That was great.
That's BJ. That was BJ.
See the white pants? What's that? Oh. Hmm.
One thing that BJ learned during this summer and taught me was how often that female was bringing in green boughs, and also with the prey deliveries. At first, the female would be there, or the male might bring the prey or the female, but then she would feed the eaglet. But as it got older, she started burying it under the green boughs, hoping it would find it, and so it would learn how to tear and rip and feed itself. But do that one. Let's see. Okay, here's the female bringing boughs. Look how big that nest is. And see all the whitewash in the background? Yeah, so I heard someone say they do it to keep the nest clean. That's true. Down the Snake River Birds of Prey, I had a coworker that worked down there, and she was telling me how many raptor chicks jumped to their death, mainly to get rid of the bot flies. It's a parasite that can suck the little chicks dry. It happens to all birds. I've worked with cavity nesters a lot and woodpeckers, and we've seen them I've used a treetop camera to look in the cavity, and like I'll notice one day, like a Thursday, oh, those chicks look lethargic. I'd come back on Monday and it was just a swirling mass of maggots from the bot flies sucking them dry and then feeding on them. Same thing with these guys. And that's one reason we think they have alternate nests too. When the parasite loading gets too high in one nest, they'll switch to another. Okay, this is when I think BJ almost had a heart attack. The chick had a very close call with the edge of the nest here. Okay, part 2 here. This chick thinks it's ready to go. Okay, then August 10th, we had volunteers Dan and Sally return to the nest, and they realized that the chick had fledged. And they went in close to make sure, and the nest was successful with 1 chick fledged. Last year, when we were monitoring this nest, we realized that the nest had failed. Some point in, I think, July, we decided. But now the cycle begins again. Last weekend, I had my volunteer Dan go back in there, and he confirmed the nest is active. The female's on the nest incubating, and look at all that greenery on the nest. So he thinks that was when the male did a prey delivery, brought food for the female while she's incubating. She will get off the nest at times, but at this stage, the female does most of the incubation with the male doing prey deliveries to keep her fed. So dates to remember, we will have our Eagle Nest monitoring training on June 18th. If you're interested in that, let me know. I also have a website down there, glaxcitizenscience@mps.gov. You can just email that to let me know if you want your name added to any of these trainings. Hawkwatch training is August 26th at the community building in West Glacier from noon to 5. And then Lake McDonald Hawkwatch training. We count up at Mount Brown as long as we can, but then come the last week of September, you can start, we don't start down there until late September because that's when the eagles start moving. You can't see the small birds like the accipiters and falcons from the lodge. So we don't start there until September 22nd. And then we have our Hawkwatch open house at the same location, October 4th, and that's usually from I think 11 to 3. And we invite Montana Wild Wings Recovery Center with live raptors with some of the birds that we see migrating back, so you can get close-ups and learn more about their life history. And if you don't want to climb Mount Brown, you don't have to. You can just come and be part of the Lake McDonald Hawkwatch count. We did really well last year. We're figuring out how to get more coverage there. And you just get to hang out and see the parade of eagles on a good day. And there are days that aren't great, but you never know. It's always fun though. And we meet at the interpretive sign there it's in front of Lake McDonald Lodge. So if you're not sure where to go to, that's where we meet. And then with that, I'd like to say thanks to Glacier National Park Volunteer Associates for helping us to get this going. And then the Glacier National Park Conservancy and their donors for continuous funding. We couldn't do it without them. And thanks to Glacier National Park and volunteers with the Northwest Lookout Association. You guys know who you are, right? For all the structural improvements. I love the new steps up to the lookout. Those are great. And then to Montana Audubon, Jake Bermonti, BJ Worth, Karen Nichols for the raptor pictures and collaborations, and to the many, many volunteers and staff for support and company. Couldn't do it without you. And with that, I'll take any questions. Yeah, way in the back there. Of a golden eagle, I think in the wild, maybe up to 20 years. In captivity, they can live to be about 40 years. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, back here. Like 45 days. Yeah. It's a long process. Is that too loud? And there's different sensitivity periods during that time. They're very vulnerable when those chicks first hatch, because it's like you going out in a rainstorm in a down coat. You're not going to stay warm. We see a lot of nest failures during that time, both bald and golden eagles. Once they start they can thermoregulate, they tend to be pretty steady for a while. But then toward the end, you saw this chick almost falling out of the nest. That's a super vulnerable period too. They can easily fall out of the nest, or and if something happens and the nest falls over, it happens with bald eagle nests a lot. The tree can fall over, the whole nest can blow out, even golden eagle nests can get blown off the cliff. So. Oh, good question. Avian influenza, not yet, but is totally on our radar, because I don't know if you're familiar, just in the West Valley this winter, we had a big die-off with avian influenza. It mainly kills raptors like eagles. Back in Minnesota and Michigan, their numbers are being decimated, so that's another reason we keep going with the monitoring program. That and water birds. If you find a dead water bird, duck, swan, anything like that, or a raptor, great horned owl, or eagles, notify someone to collect that carcass. Don't handle it yourself, because there are a few cases where humans have contracted it. It's not deadly like other diseases, but all these viruses are always evolving and changing, so we got to be super careful. But we do want to know about that, and we have a really intense program at the park that if someone finds a carcass, we just try to get people out there to collect it and submit it for testing immediately. I'm concerned because we've got that just right outside the park. We have white-nosed cinder right outside the park, 5 miles north of Glacier now. Chronic wasting disease with our ungulates. So it's sort of like this, I don't know, we've got all these different emerging wildlife diseases just way too close to Glacier for comfort right now. So, you guys all can help. If you see an ungulate walking around looking sloppy with its head, or anything odd, alert someone so we can check it out and see what's going on. Thank you for mentioning that. There was a question over here. If it's outside the park, yes. If it's inside the park, please let me know, or any of the other wildlife folks. And you can just call the information number to connect with us if you don't have our numbers or emails. Thank you. Yeah.
You've been following the live webcam on the Big Bear bald eagles in California?
I've looked at it once or twice, but Cornell sends me all these webcams, like the barred owls, the albatross. So they're time suckers, and I have to sort of stay away from them. I can watch those all day, but I also have to do my job. So I don't look at them that often anymore. It's pretty cool though, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, great question. What's the difference between between a bald eagle and a golden eagle? In Glacier, all of our golden eagle nests are on cliffs, okay? Usually between like 5,000 and 6,500 feet. And, they love to put green boughs on them. Whereas bald eagle nests, mainly, they're our apex predator in aquatic systems. So they want to build their nests where they can see the water. And they build it in a big tree. And you can always tell the difference between an osprey nest and a bald eagle nest, because 99% of the time, a bald eagle nest is in a tree with limbs protruding up above it. An osprey nest is almost 99% of the time on top of the platform or the top of the snag. So that's how you can tell the difference between those two also. Outside the park, golden eagles will nest in trees. I have not seen that ever, but I don't leave this area much in the summer. So yeah, great question. Yeah.
Where are the golden eagles migrating to and from then?
Great question. We don't know unless you have a transmitter on them. But a couple times up at Mount Brown, Jake Bramante caught a picture of an eagle with a transmitter on the back. And we looked at the data online, and we think it came from Denali National Park, where the biologists up there had been putting transmitters on. But without transmitter or the patagial tags, we did have an eagle with patagial tags, and because we got the number, we knew that it had been banded at Rogers Pass here in Montana by Rob Dominich. He puts transmitters on a lot of the raptors there. He's also the one that tests for lead poisoning, and in the fall, when there's a lot of hunting, the lead blood levels in these raptors goes up to like near 90% of them having elevated blood levels. Then they learn that it drops after the hunting season. So they can sort of recover if it's not too acute. But yeah, that's the $1 million question. Like, where are they coming from and where are they going? And without transmitters or tags, you just don't know. And that's a really expensive investment, and both time and money wise. So, yeah.
So it's not the same then, like we know, like with hummingbirds. Hummingbirds are seasonal in the sense that they're not here year round. They go down to South America in the winter from here. So the eagles, they're not here. Some of them are here year round. I know, like they could be going down to Florida. They could be going south someplace else, and then they'd be coming up here, like to breed, going up
Yeah.
to Alaska like that.
Well, like the bald golden eagles, most birds have very strong site fidelity to their breeding grounds. Like harlequin ducks, for example, the females only breed on streams where they were born. Eagles show that same thing. They will come back to that same nest year after year. There's the Lake McDonald bald eagle nest at the north end of Lake McDonald. You know, when I got here, that nest had been active for 40 years. And then the Howe Ridge fire started. So that territory has been active, and but where they go in the winter, we don't know. They will go where the food is. They're not going to stay in an area where there's no food. And the golden eagles, you know, it's sort of like the snowy owls when the lemming populations plummet up in the Arctic. That's when we start seeing them come down this way. They have to find food or they're going to die. So we don't know without transmitters, but some go to Wyoming, some go to Texas with the golden eagles, some just go to, you know, eastern Montana. It really depends on the year and the individual. But they do return to their breeding grounds as long as that was a successful breeding territory. If not, they'll leave it. Like going to the Sun Road, past right below the loop, you know, that fire happened, when was that, 2004 or something, 3? So we used to have some golden eagle nests in there. We don't anymore, and I think it's mainly because of the habitat changes. With everything growing up, the eagles can't catch all the small mammals anymore. So we do see changes like that. Last summer I went into Lake Isabel with my techs, and that we used to have a nest in there. But when I got there, that had burned also, and it was so densely covered with fresh vegetation. I'm like, oh, no wonder the eagles aren't here. They can't catch the mammals, the ground squirrels. So there's always shifts depending on what's happening on the landscape too. One over here.
Once the chicks fledge, do they come back to the nest and back and go and
Yeah, that's a great question too. So what we see is for like 2 or 3 months, the chicks know that's where the food is. So you'll see them coming back to that nest and just standing there screaming, feed me, feed me. And eventually, you know, for a while, the parents will feed them. And then there's a point where like, oh, no, you're on your own now. Often, like I see this more with bald eagles because they're easier for us to monitor. You're going to see a 2-year-old bird coming back to that area, just checking it out and maybe hanging out. But eventually, they have to find their own territory. The parents won't let them. They'll defend it against the fledglings also. Yeah.
So is that likely to be the same breeding pair that you just identified?
Yes. I mean, I can't confirm that. Yeah, they tend to mate for life, but if one of the pair dies, they often, if they like that territory, they will find another mate. And that's like what happened with the Lake McDonald one. That's why it's been going on for decades. So we keep seeing that one going on. Did you guys like the videos? Oh, one more question back here.
Get all the calendars.
Oh, I know we miss birds. But at every site, even up at Joe Basin with like 7 expert birders, you're going to miss birds. Because sometimes they're so low or so high. And that's why it really helps to have like multiple observers. Even if you can't identify a bird, the best thing for us is like bird, and then we can get our binocs on to identify it. And that's how you learn too. It's super fun. So, yeah. Sometimes you yell dot because it's so far away. Yeah.
Birds come back to the drainage where they were fledged, or where they were born.
The eagles or the ducks?
So, the eagle.
Yeah.
So how come like in Lake McDonald, and you've got ticks every year, I mean, that's a big drainage, but are we getting a lot more eagles in the drainage because of that nest there?
Yes. When I started in 2009 at the park, there was one, 2 years prior to that, there was only one bald eagle nest on the lake. Then in 2007, a second bald eagle nest was found near Fish Creek. And then, gosh, I'm not sure what year, maybe 6 years ago, a third nest was found. So bald eagle numbers are increasing. They're a success story for the Endangered Species Act because their numbers have rebounded incredibly. And now, though, we are seeing the 2 major threats to bald eagles and golden eagles are avian influenza and lead poisoning. And it's really, that's why we want to keep going with our monitoring programs, because we are concerned that we're going to see some decreases, especially with avian influenza inching closer all the time. Golden eagles are different. I have deep concerns for them, and I don't really know what's going on, but a lot of people in some places, they seem to be doing well, but in our area, we just aren't seeing a lot of success. So that's why we're trying to keep our finger on the pulse and find new nests to monitor. I don't really know what's going on, but like in Yellowstone, they can trap golden eagles there and put transmitters on them, and we've considered that in Glacier, and I just don't see a way that it's possible, just because we have such terrain differences and things like that. Because where the nests are in Yellowstone, they tend to be lower, and they put bait on the valley floor with a harp trap and a bow net trap, and that's something you just spring low when they come down. But our nests are so high that I just don't think the eagles would see it. And then, right when the eagles get back, the eagles in Yellowstone tend to stay year round. Ours don't. It's rare to see a golden eagle in the park. I just think because there's not food, so they leave. And by the time they get back, the grizzlies are coming out, and it makes it difficult. I mean, we could do it, but I think it wouldn't be very successful with how high our nest. Like on Mount Cannon, it's easily 1,000 feet above the valley floor. And I just don't think they'd come in. I don't think they'd take the bait. So, great questions, everyone.
Yeah, Lisa, thank you so much. We have a little thank you gift for you. So Chuck and Tom Roberts have something to present. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Tom is a local artist who did a custom piece for you.
I can't wait.
We hope you like it.
Oh,
I'll trade places with you.
okay.
My name's Tom Roberts, and I'm, like you said, a local artist here. I've had the pleasure of doing gifts, appreciation gifts for the speakers at the Wildlife Series for the last 6 years. And it's my pleasure this year to present Lisa with a painting of a golden eagle.
Oh my gosh. Oh, did you do this? Oh, did you sign it? Oh, thank you
Oh, yeah.
so much.
It's down here.
What age is it?
You tell me.
Oh, that's beautiful. Look at that. Thank you so much. Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you guys. Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's so sweet. Wow. an honor. Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. Oh, that's so beautiful. Oh gosh. I'll have to put this in my office.
Yeah.
Yeah.